Hello and welcome to the tutorial on robotic process automation using UiPath. In this session, we will consider an example to build a workflow for a guessing game by generating a random number. Initially, we will be generating a random number and then we will ask the user to guess the number, and if it matches the random number that we have generated, then we'll display the appropriate message. So these are the conditions that needs to be met in order to build this workflow. Initially, we will generate a random number and we will prompt the user to input a number. And in case if the user inputs a wrong number, then we will give a message saying please enter a lesser or greater number depending on the random number that is being generated. And ultimately, we will keep on looping through the user input so that the users can keep on guessing the number, and if the input given by the user matches the random number that is generated, then we will stop the loop and we will display the appropriate message for the user. Now let us jump into our UiPath Studio software and let us create a new flowchart and give it a name as guessing game. Okay, guessing game demo. Okay, and say create. So this is going to give us a start in the designer panel, and the next task is to go on adding the set of activities. So since we need to loop through the prompt so that the user can input repeatedly for guessing the number, we will make use of the do while activity so that we can loop through again and again until the user guesses the number appropriately. So we will search for do while activity. So this I'll drag and drop it here and I'll connect it to the start. Okay, and in the do while, the necessary condition is whether the number that the user has given is exactly the number or not. That we need to check. So that's why I'll make use of an inbuilt function called as isNumeric, followed by a variable that is my number. Okay, so this we will read it from the user. So for reading the input from the user, we'll use an input dialog. We'll make use of an input dialog for getting the user input. We'll give the title as guessing game and we'll give it a label as enter a number, or we can say guess the number. Okay, so here let us create a variable for storing the value that is given by the user. So we'll go to the properties panel and in the output section we'll create a variable by pressing Ctrl K and giving the name as my num. Okay, so this is our while loop. So the next thing is we need to generate a random number. So let us go to the variables panel. Let us create a variable called as random number. Okay, and how to generate a random number, that we will see now. So we explicitly do not have any activity for generating a random number, but we can do it using the inbuilt functions. So I'll go to this default section and I'll say new space random dot next. So of course this random is a method or function, so we need to have the braces, and then we have the next method. We'll make use of this next method to generate a random number between the values that we specify in this particular brace. So let us say 1, 100. So let the random number be between 1 and 100. Okay, so that's it. So as we have the variable type to be equal to string, that's why it is giving an error here. So let us change this to int 32. Okay, so the error has gone now. So we have generated the random number. Now the next thing is to verify whether the input given by the user matches the random number or not. Okay, so for that we'll simply make use of if activity here. So in the if activity, what is the first condition? We have three different conditions to be checked here. One is if the random number is equal to the number given by the user as the input, and if it is less than the random number, and if it is greater than the random number. So all these three conditions should be handled here. So first of all, let us go with the random number being equal to the input given by the user. So here we will say my number is equals to random number. Okay, if so, we need to give the appropriate message for the user in the then section. So we will use a simple message box here, and in the quotations we will give a message saying congratulations, you guessed it right. Okay, and let us also add the number that the user has guessed. So we will have it in the new line in the message box. So that's why we will make use of the inbuilt feature, that is VBCRLF, just to give a new line, and then after this we'll print a message saying the number is my num. That is what the user has guessed. So this is our then part. Okay, next in the else part we again have two different conditions to be checked. One is if the number is less than the random number, and one more is if the number is greater than the guessed number. So we will make use of one more if activity in the else part of this initial if activity. Okay, so we again have two sections here, that is then and else. So the condition here is if my number is less than the random number, then we should give the appropriate message for the user. So again, we will make use of this message box activity, and here we'll give a message that please enter a greater number, okay, as it is lesser. Okay, so this is our then part. Then in the else part, let us add one more message box so that we can give the appropriate message, because the else part is for my number being greater than the random number. So here we'll give a message that please enter a lesser number. Okay, so fine, so we are done. So this looks a little wider. The entire workflow is widespread here. So let us view this appropriately by dragging the other panels, or else even you can minimize them by clicking on this particular icon. So this is our entire workflow. So initially we will have the do while, and in the do while we will ask the user to give the input, and once he gives the input, we'll enter into the initial if condition where we check whether the inputted number equals the random number. If so, we'll print the appropriate message for the user. Otherwise, we'll go to the else part, and we will also check for one more condition, that is my number less than random number. If so, we'll give a message for the user saying please enter a greater number. Else, we will give a message saying please enter a lesser number, and this keeps on running until and unless we enter the correct number. So when this particular number is numeric, then only it will enter the loop, otherwise it will terminate. Okay, so that's it. Let us run this workflow. So it has started the debugging, and now it has started the execution. Yeah, it has started the execution. Now the robot will start running the workflow. Okay, so we got this guessing game prompt where we enter the number. So let me enter a number, say 35, and say okay. It says please enter a greater number. So let me click on OK and say 50 this time. Say OK. It says enter a lesser number. Say OK. And let's say 45. It says enter a lesser number. Say 42. It says again a lesser number. This time we'll say 40. Yeah, it says congratulations, you guessed it right.